Hey guys, it's Serge here, and welcome to the mouse sculpting tutorial. And I want to tackle it slightly differently. Not only I want to give you some basics of anatomy, but also give you some terminology and show you some slides. And I really hope it's going to be the means for you to then later on work on your own sculpt. I'd like to point out though that this is not introduction to Zbrush tutorial. But even if you have some basic knowledge of either Zbrush, Mudbox or Blender, you can definitely follow along because the tools are quite similar. Whether you're just a beginner or a pro, there's something for everyone in this tutorial. So, without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, let's get into it. So usually I start with a sphere, as you can see, and I start carving in the gap between the lips with a damp standard brush. So I've chosen as a reference Henry Cavill, just because he has quite distinct features of the face. So you can obviously go with whoever you like. Don't have to be very precious about it. You can always adjust things later on. And I finish with the marionette lines, which is essentially, if you look on the reference, the small dimple at the corners of the mouth. I exaggerated quite a bit just because I want to separate the upper lip and the bottom lip. The next thing I want to carve out the bottom lip, and this is to be able to create, the step effect, because the highest point is the upper lip. Don't have to be nice about it either, and just smooth it out. So if you look on the side profile picture, you can see that the highest peak is the upper lip. On most of the people faces, the upper lip protruding out and the bottom lip is tucking under it. So this is what we're trying to do here. So that's good enough. The next thing I will be adding is vermilion border. So the vermilion border is this guy right here, which is essentially the borders of your lips. Just marking with a green pencil. The way you spell it, it's like so, vermilion border. While we're on this slide, I wanted to show you the next thing we'll tackle is the philtrum. It's a little depression above your upper lip. It's this guy right here, number 10. Philtrum. Let's jump back into Zbrush. Okay, the best way I find to create the vermilion border is by using pinch brush. You'll see in a second. So I have the lazy mouse activated as well. And then just tap 1 on the keyboard. And there you go, the upper lip is made for you for free. Well, not quite so. The next thing I usually do is just give it some volume because it's now as you can see, it's quite rough and flat. So the upper lip consists of 3 sections. The center of the upper lip, called tubercle, and usually is the part that's protruding out the most. I'm exaggerating now, which is just a fatty pad, and the other are just the side fatty pads. This particular actor, if you can look at the reference, the tubercle doesn't actually stand out as much. So I'll keep that in mind, and I'll push back. Just going with the trusty old clay tubes brush, which is probably the go-to brush for me. Most of the things. Now the side pads are generally flat compared to the center of the upper lip, yet you still want to add some volume to the lips. Now, while we're looking at the side profile, if you look at the reference here, you can see that the going up from the vermilion border from the upper lip to the nostrils, this line is quite straight. So we want to address that as well. And with a standard brush, I usually go over the vermilion border just to create that slight bump. And subtracting just above it. So that's good. Now we can work on the philtrum. Philtrum is generally wide at the base, and it gets more narrow as it gets closer to the nostrils. With the standard brush, I go over the borders of the philtrum just to give it more shape and the direction, and smooth it out. So this is pretty good for now. We'll be going back and forth because once we have the bottom lip, we'll see things more clearly, proportionally speaking. So the base of the philtrum on this particular guy is quite sharp. It's almost like, you know, like a boomerang, I guess. And the picks are not as far apart. But yeah, we can address all that once we have the bottom lip in place. So usually I would indicate the border of the bottom lip with the pinch brush again. And just step one again. And as you can see in the reference, the vermilion border of the bottom lip, it never actually goes all the way to the corner of the mouth. What I mean is, I'll exaggerate and show you, like it never do that. Like you never see the sharp corner. So it tucks under the upper lip just before it actually gets to the corner. So next step is adding some volume back into the bottom lip. And the bottom lip, as I mentioned, the upper lip consists of 3 sections, whereas the bottom lip consists of 2 sections. And the center part of the upper lip, the tubercle, wedges between the 2 sections of the bottom lip. What I mean is, I'm exaggerating, so this is how it works. It pushes down, and the two sections of the bottom lip, they raise up. But in this case, in this actor, the tubercle doesn't go all the way down as much as I showed it to you. Now switching back to the clay tubes and adding the volume back into the bottom lip. Every now and then I'll go to the side view. Okay. Now looking at the side profile, the interesting thing in here is how there is a quite change of angle between the vermilion border of the bottom lip and the crease and then the chin. So we want to try and do the same. So let's start by actually adding the chin, so we have something to compare to. We can rough it out with clay tubes or push it out with Mudbox, a bit of both. Just start it with chin, then pull it out, smooth it out. Now what I'll do is I'll push out the bottom of the bottom lip, and by doing so I'm creating this angle as you see in the side profile. At this stage I'm not worried that my bottom lip is protruding out because I'll push it back right in. What's important for me is this angle right here. So that's looking pretty good. So I can either, it's probably the easiest way to grab the upper lip and just pull it out. Yeah, because we want to make sure that the upper lip is protruding. So that's looking pretty good. Now, probably want to just add the division between the lips again, because it's kind of getting lost. Okay, just checking some proportions while we're at it. So I can see that the high peaks of the upper lip are quite tall. So I want to pull it down. And as you can see here in the reference, the vermilion border of the bottom lip, for a certain section, it goes rather straight. So we want to address that as well. And then it smoothly tucks under the upper lip. So let's just add some volume here. The top part of the bottom lip. It's probably easiest to actually grab the move brush and pull out the actual gap. And with the clay tubes is just smoothing out that transition. Again, addressing the edge of the upper lip. Yeah, so that's better. Okay, just checking the proportions. Okay, so the next step is actually, if you look on the reference, probably the bottom reference is the best. These bumps right here are called the pillars of the mouth, or the depressor labii inferioris. Okay, so this guy right here is the depressor labii inferioris, which is this fella. And while we're here, it tucks under the depressor anguli oris, which is the muscle right here. Let's jump back into Zbrush. Okay, so let's indicate the pillars of the mouth. Adding the volume. This section right here that I'm sculpting is it's either stands out on some people or quite subtle. So this is fairly good. If you look at the reference on the right hand side, the just where it meets with the border of the bottom lip, there is another bump, and we want to show that as a change of plane. It's actually protruding out. And then with the low intensity of the brush, you want to add that sort of, fat or skin layer back to make the smooth transition between, the muscles and the border. You can either, use smooth brush or just a low intensity clay tubes brush, whatever you feel most comfortable with. And as I mentioned before, we're going to be adding the depressor anguli oris, which is the muscle that just crosses the depressor labii inferioris, or the pillars of the mouth, like so. So even though on some people you don't see these, they don't stand out as much, but when you know where they are and what they're doing, you know how to place them. You can easily then add back the, the skin layer or the fat layer. But it never is a mystery to you. What is this bump? What is this, depression? Stuff like that. And then with the low intensity, you can always add the transition between the, the muscles. So all these muscles, they actually tuck in under the chin fat pad. Again, with the skin and fat and the combination of these muscles, you don't see that sharp separation. Just working on a few things at once. Just adding that dimple to the chin. On the chin a little bit. Just comparing that distance between the border of the bottom lip and the crease of the chin. I will lift it up slightly. And the next big thing is actually adding the this muscle here. Or well, it's actually the group of muscles, its point, that's called modulus. So when I talk about modulus, I cannot not mention the orbicularis oris, which is the muscle that goes around the lips, around the mouth, like so. As you can see in the side view here as well. And the point where a lot of muscles meet, which is here, is called modulus. On this diagram here, you can see what's happening as all these muscles, they grab onto the orbicularis oris, and some of them are traveling through or grab onto this point, which is the modulus. This guy right here, which is a very important point to showcase on your characters. You can also see it on this slide. So here's our modulus, which is the point where all these muscles meet. Here's the muscle that we already know. This is depressor angulioris. And this is the depressor labii inferioris. Okay, so let's add the modulus. And what I want to make sure as well is that I create this change of planes right here. As you can see in the reference, there's a slight shadow there. On the bottom reference, maybe you can see it a bit more, just above the upper lip. So it's from the modulus and combination of the orbicularis oris. So it's quite a big mass. And then smooth it out. So at this stage, usually I would like to accentuate some of the borders of the lips. Again, add back that slight bump that I add with the standard brush. And with the clay tubes, just go over and remove any funny transitions. This is fairly good. And the bottom lip, just add that edge as well. And with the clay tubes, just go over a bit. Now the pillars of the mouth, look, as I mentioned previously, it has this section here that's protruding out. So we want to address that. So this is the time where you'd be, going back and forth and just essentially polishing your model, comparing and, changing the proportions and stuff like that. So here I'm adding, like, for instance, the skin layer. So I hide this transition and don't show the borders as much. I'll do the same in here. Let's have a look. So that's fairly good. And just smooth it. Our dimple. Smooth that. Also, it's probably a good time to actually get rid of the stuff that we don't need. So usually I select what I want to see, and in the geometry modify topology, delete hidden. Also, because there's nothing at the back, I want to close holes. This will help for the next step. So then I want to clip curve. I want to clip the stuff that we don't need to see. Kind of like so. And then just smooth out the rest. You don't really need to do it, but I find it helps me you know, concentrating on that area and not being distracted with the rest of the face. So that's good. And then just sort of change some of the proportions. Yeah, just comparing the side view, so our chin is probably protruding out a bit more. I pull out the lips a little bit, push back on the corners, check again that line on the side profile, just straighten it out. Now the line between the lips, that gap is actually quite straight in neutral state. So I want to compare that to mine, and for me the corners of the mouth are quite low, so I want to change that. So essentially this is the stage where you can, you know, spend the most of the time. This is the polishing stage, where you check with your reference and adjust the proportions. If you're not doing, you know, the likeness, if you're not working on any particular actor and this is your own character, you know, then it's whatever you want it to be. Now just comparing the upper lip and the bottom lip, they're quite even, whereas generally the bottom lip is thicker. So I want to change that. So once I change the center of the upper lip, obviously need to readjust the high picks. And probably add some fullness in here. So I want to be a little bit more faithful to the reference. So this is fairly good. Just adding a little bit more fat and skin in here. Looking at all the sides again. So I think our chin can protrude even more. Let's look at the side profile. Yeah, I think it needs some more. Just changing the silhouette a little bit. This guy's base of the philtrum is quite, you know, quite a sharp angle. It's almost like going into the point. And just move it a little bit. Oops, clay tubes. Again, just working on this change of planes in here. Smooth it out. Yeah, so this is essentially it. The next thing is just, you know, adding a bit more details if you want. Going over with this, you know, subtle intensity of your brush and just adding that skin layer and fat layer. It's all about little, you know, nuances here and there. If you want to add, you know, cheap details, you can do it with the DEM standard. it's probably best to turn off the symmetry at this stage. All the faces asymmetrical. This is actually the final step. Once you're happy with your model, you want to make sure you turn off your symmetry, and you want to raise one corner of the mouth, lower the other one, because we're not symmetrical. So you want to observe that. If you need to, you can put the reference on the background, and you can match it to that closer. So with the symmetry turned off, I get my dem standard, and I can just add this little irregularities to the lips, just like so. Just adds this extra level of realism. And sometimes with a standard brush, like on the right hand side, you can see it has a little depression there. You can add that if you want. It's all little details that help sell. And maybe find a little, I can probably turn on my symmetry back on, just slightly readjusting the filter and smooth it out. So yeah, I'm very happy with the result. I hope you guys, have learned a lot from this. But yeah, this is the final result. Hey, congrats, and we're finally done with the model. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial as much as I have creating it, and that you have learned a lot. Please don't be shy and leave some comments down below. As a small bonus, I will provide a link to my Gumroad page, where you'll be able to download the video and the OBJ of the model for your own convenience. This is just the first part of the series of the tutorials that are yet to come, so please stay tuned, like if you like the content, and subscribe to my channel. If you're wondering about the book that I was using throughout this tutorial, it's Anatomy of Facial Expression by Uldis Zarinch, and I will leave the name in the description as well. This is it for this tutorial. Thanks for joining, and until next time, bye bye.